father of Hollywood.com, along with Truthwins.com, presents Dreamland New Beginnings, written by Dr. Galen Whitley Keith, narrated by Keith Whitley. Chapter 2. A horse-drawn carriage filled with stylishly dressed passengers passed by the Whitley family's American Queen Anne house. It had just received a dusting of snow, which accented the Christmas decorations in a most delightful manner. A stable worker, known as a footman, was preparing a two-horse carriage in order to take the Whitley family Christmas shopping. He attempted to drive away the piercing cold that was seeping up through his worn boots by stamping his feet. Inside, the chambermaid descended the stairs, balancing a tray laden with dirty breakfast dishes on her way to the kitchen. Along the hall, she overheard Joseph Whitley's voice echoing sharply, full of impatience. He was a middle-aged man with spectacles perched upon his nose. "H.J., why are you wasting your time reading that perplexing book? It's filled with nonsensical pip stories. You should be focusing on your studies." Passing by Molly, who was dutifully dusting the furniture, the chambermaid paused. Molly gave her a small, knowing smile, nodding in response to the chambermaid's unspoken question about Joseph's usual intensity. "Yes," she whispered, "he's at it again. Forgotten what it feels like to be young." Just 18, young H.J. already bore the calm strength of manhood, though softened by the kindness of his face and the lingering hesitations of youth. Tall over 6 feet, he had broad shoulders that promised the man he was becoming, yet his eyes still carried a hopeful light. He reclined on a deep-cushioned sofa in the Whitley family's exquisite library, a room that wrapped him in its dignified presence. The walls towered high and were filled, floor to ceiling, with shelves of fine books, spines of leather, and gilt lettering catching the flicker of firelight. Tall burgundy curtains framed the frost-edged windows, muting the pale glow of the snowy world outside. A carved mahogany table sat beside him, stacked with papers and trimmed with ornate brass. The scent of aged volumes mixed with the faint polish of beeswax, a scent that H.J. found both soothing and inspiring. On his lap, Great Expectations lay open, its pages devoured with a sense of wonder and seriousness unusual for his age. He closed the book gently, staring for a moment at its cover before setting it aside carefully on the side table. His gaze lifted then to the hearth's blaze, the flames reflected in his thoughtful eyes, as though their restless dance might hold some unspoken answer to his questions about life, about future, about himself. Joseph Whitley moved stiffly to the fire, posture upright and voice edged with stern authority. Spectacles gleaming, he rubbed his palms before the fire as the warmth chased away the chill clinging to his skin. "With the education you've been given," he lectured, his voice heavy with expectation, "there are no excuses for wasting time on frivolous stories." The great hunting dog stretched before the fire, curled tightly on the thick rug, unconcerned with father or son. Its occasional twitch or sigh was the only break in the tense silence that followed. H.J. glanced toward his father, but his voice was steady. "Stories aren't a waste. They inspire me. Without dreams, we'd never find the courage to pursue anything." His youthful conviction clashed with Joseph's hard pragmatism, yet the words carried a truth that even the old man could not entirely dismiss. At that moment, Eleanor Whitley entered, her smiling presence softening the sharp air of the room. Her fur-lined coat still carried a trace of snow from outside, and beneath it, her dark dress flowed richly about her frame. The freshness of the winter air followed her in, and her gentle glance toward H.J. let him know she at least understood. Soon the warmth returned in another form, the arrival of Fanny. She swept into the study with grace, her refinement plain in every gesture, her shoulders straight, her head lifted in quiet confidence. H.J. broke into a grin, bounding to his feet with sudden energy as he greeted her warmly with a hug. Around her, the stiffness of the house seemed to dissolve, yielding to laughter, chatter, and the comforting smell of fir garlands hung throughout the home. The conversations of hunting rifles, of Christmas shopping, of gift requests, though filled with light jokes and easy banter, could not fully erase the unseen tension of expectation that still lingered in the room. Yet, when H.J. requested an adventure story for Christmas, "Journey to the Center of the Earth," he said softly. His eyes gleamed. It was not a frivolous wish. It was a yearning for something greater, for possibility, for discovery. Outside, the snow paused in its fall, and a wide sunbeam caught the crystals that blanketed the earth. For a fleeting moment, the Whitley home gleamed like a jewel wrapped in diamond-like light. The spruce trees bent under their white burden, their branches cushioned like spun cotton candy against the ice-blue sky. But by late afternoon, the light shrank away, swallowed by gathering storm clouds, and with it, the magic dissolved into shadow. The night came fast, a curtain of darkness closing around the young man, still staring into firelight layer upon layer, pressing down until even he could feel its weight on his chest. The last embers in the fireplace drew their final breath, collapsing into shadow. The elegant Whitley library, with its high shelves and crimson curtains, fell to a hush as if holding its sorrow in advance. H.J. lay upon the velvet sofa, long legs draped carelessly beneath a woolen blanket, his youthful face softened in sleep. The book upon his chest, Great Expectations, spread open like the wing of some fallen bird, pages fluttering faintly in the draught. It was not the crackling of the fire, for there was none left, nor the bark of the faithful dog that roused him. Rather, it was the trembling touch of the chambermaid's hand upon his shoulder, warm and sorrowful, her candlelight quivering above him. Her eyes glistened, tears spilling freely down her cheeks, her lips unable at first to form the words. "The sheriff is here to see you," she managed at last, her voice broken by grief. H.J. stirred, confusion first clouding his gaze. He sat upright, the novel sliding noiselessly onto the rug where the dog lay curled. In the doorway stood several men, their coats powdered with snow, hats in hand, their solemnity written so deeply into their countenances that H.J. felt it before he heard it. He knew in his heart, even before the sheriff spoke. "Son," the sheriff said gently, lowering his eyes as though wishing not to meet the boy's, "there was an accident. The carriage overturned on the ice. Your father and mother were taken from this life tonight." The words struck him like a blow. His body stiffened, hands gripping the edge of the blanket until his knuckles whitened. A great stillness descended upon him, robbed of breath, stripped even of the relief of tears. The chamber seemed to tilt, the walls pressing inward, all the firelight gone save the candle's feeble glow. For a moment he looked not like the tall young man of 18 he was, but like a child again, stranded and small in a world suddenly too vast. Grief came, sharp and merciless, yet with it came memory, Joseph's voice booming about duty, sound judgment, the mantle of leadership, Eleanor's gentler voice, warm as a hearth, reminding him of dreams, asking tenderly what he wished for Christmas. Both now belonged to the silence of the grave. "You are of age," the sheriff said, clearing his throat against the heaviness. "This estate, this household, they will look to you. The world is upon young shoulders now, boy." The chambermaid stifled a sob and gripped his arm, her presence steady, though her own grief threatened to crush her. H.J. could not speak, not for several moments. At last he managed, voice hoarse and uneven. "My father wanted me to lead, to build, to become something greater. But I wanted only to dream." The words tasted bitter, heavy with guilt and longing. He turned to the window where the night pressed in and stared beyond the frost toward the unseen sky. What was left for him? Was he to bury his books, his stories, his restless imaginings beneath the soil of responsibility? Or could a young man bless both path's duty and dream honoring the memory of his parents while still seeking the fire that kindled his heart? In his eyes, tears welled at last and spilled freely, not of weakness, but of release. He saw the roads before him, one paved in hard soil of expectation, his father's road, the other leading into a fog of uncertainty, the realm of dreams that might scatter like feathers before the wind. Yet even as the fire in the hearth died, leaving only ash, a new brightness crept into his gaze. He would not abandon the future his parents carved. No, yet neither would he surrender the whispers of imagination that sustained him. Perhaps both burdens could be borne, or perhaps the attempt would break him. At 18 he could not yet know. He pressed a hand upon the book at his side, the very story that had stirred his heart great expectations. A bitter coincidence, perhaps, yet one that felt like a message. "Nothing dies if it is remembered," he whispered, though no one in the room seemed to hear. The sheriff turned away, giving him space, the men shifting uneasily. The chambermaid's candle flared in the draught of the long hallway. Behind them all, the house seemed to sigh, a grand house, now emptied of the laughter of its master and mistress. H.J. rose slowly to his full height, tall and unsteady, the blanket falling away. Childhood had ended in an instant. From this night forward, the boy was gone, replaced by a figure who bore grief, responsibility, and perhaps, if he dared to keep it, hope enough to shape his own destiny. Outside, the snow intensified, a veil over the land, blind and merciless. Yet far off in that obscured world, the first flickers of a different fire beckoned, a fire not of hearth or duty, but of dream. And H.J. knew, though grief burdened every breath, that his story was no longer measured by what his father demanded, or even by what fate took from him. It would be measured instead by what he found the courage to pursue. Come back next Wednesday to hear the next chapter of Dreamland New Beginnings, written by Dr. Galen Whitley Keith, narrated by Keith Whitley.